It was supposed to be the perfect weekend getaway. Four friends, Ethan, Claire, Marcus, and Jenna, had planned a camping trip deep in the Whispering Pines National Forest. The forest was known for its serene beauty, towering trees, and the faint, almost melodic rustling of the wind through the pines. But it was also known for something else, the disappearances. Over the years, hikers and campers had vanished without a trace, their tents found empty, their belongings left behind. The locals called it the curse of the Whispering Pines. The group arrived late Friday afternoon, their SUV bumping along the narrow dirt road that led to the campsite. The sun was already low in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. They set up their tents near a small clearing, the trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. As they unpacked, Ethan, the self-proclaimed leader of the group, tried to lighten the mood. "Come on, guys," he said, grinning. "It's just a few spooky stories. Nothing to worry about. We're here to have fun, right?" But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest seemed to change. The air grew colder, and the rustling of the trees took on an eerie, almost whispering quality. The group gathered around the campfire, its flickering light casting dancing shadows on their faces. It started with the sounds. As they sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories, they began to hear it, a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone knocking on wood. At first, they brushed it off as the wind or an animal. But the tapping grew louder, more deliberate, as if something was trying to get their attention. "Did you hear that?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah," Marcus replied, his eyes darting toward the trees. "Probably just a woodpecker or something." But no one believed him. The tapping was too steady, too purposeful. It seemed to be coming from all around them, echoing through the forest. As the night wore on, the group grew more uneasy. The firelight seemed to dim, as if the darkness was closing in around them. The whispering of the trees grew louder, almost like voices murmuring just beyond the edge of the clearing. "Let's just go to bed," Claire suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's late, and we're all tired." They agreed, retreating to their tents. But sleep didn't come easily. The tapping continued, now accompanied by a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the shadows. And then there were the footsteps, soft, shuffling steps that circled the campsite, pausing outside each tent. The next morning, Marcus was gone. His tent was empty, the zipper left open. His sleeping bag was crumpled on the ground, and his backpack was still inside, untouched. The group searched the area, calling his name, but there was no sign of him. The forest was eerily silent, the whispering of the trees replaced by an oppressive stillness. "Maybe he went for a walk," Jenna suggested, though her voice betrayed her fear. "Without his shoes?" Ethan asked, pointing to Marcus's boots, still sitting neatly by the tent entrance. As the day wore on, the group tried to convince themselves that Marcus had simply wandered off and would return soon. But deep down, they knew something was wrong. The forest felt different, alive, almost, as if it was watching them. That night, the tapping returned, louder and more insistent than before. The whispers grew clearer, though the words were still indistinct. And then there were the shadows. At first, they seemed like ordinary shadows cast by the firelight. But as the group watched, the shadows began to move on their own, stretching and twisting in unnatural ways. "Did you see that?" Jenna asked, her voice shaking. No one answered. They were all staring at the shadows, which now seemed to be taking on shapes, humanoid figures that loomed just beyond the edge of the firelight. The figures didn't move, but their presence was palpable, a suffocating weight that pressed down on the group. "Let's get out of here," Claire said, her voice barely audible. But as they packed up their belongings, the forest seemed to resist. The trees creaked and groaned, their branches swaying as if alive. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, and the tapping became a deafening cacophony. And then, one by one, the flashlights began to fail, plunging the group into darkness. In the pitch-black forest, the group stumbled blindly, their screams echoing through the trees. The shadows closed in around them, their whispers now clear and menacing. "You shouldn't have come," the voices hissed. "This is our place." One by one, the friends were taken, their screams cut short as they were dragged into the darkness. Only Ethan remained, his flashlight flickering weakly as he ran through the forest. But no matter how far he ran, the trees seemed to stretch on forever, the whispers growing louder with every step. Finally, he collapsed, his strength gone. As he lay on the forest floor, the shadows closed in around him, their whispers now a deafening roar. "You'll never leave," they said. "No one ever does." Weeks later, a search party found the campsite. The tents were still standing, the belongings untouched. But there was no sign of the four friends. The only clue was a single word, carved into the trunk of a nearby tree. The locals shook their heads, muttering about the curse of the whispering pines. And as the search party left the forest, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the shadows were still there, waiting for the next group of campers to arrive.